Hi class! So I'm going to, in this video, go through how to recreate each of these logos using the tools that we've talked about in Illustrator so far. You are welcome to pause the video and follow along with me as I'm doing it. And if you don't want to watch me do one that you've already done, feel free to skip ahead. This is just meant to be a help for you. If you can remember how to do it without the video, you don't need to use the video. This is just here to help in case you need it. So let's get started. Okay, we're going to start out with the Adidas logo, and then we'll do the Nike, then the YMCA, then the Chanel. So just go ahead and skip ahead to whichever logo that you are going to need to do if you don't need to start with Adidas with me. Okay, I'm going to move those off to the side, and I'll just put this here so we can see it while we're working. Okay, the first thing I'm going to do for this Adidas is going to be the shapes on the top. And to do that, I'm going to need to use my rectangle tool, which is the shape tool. It's right here. If you remember, if you hold open on it, it shows you some other shape options, but we're just going to use the regular old rectangle. So I'll select that tool, and I'm going to draw myself a rectangle, kind of pretty tall and skinny, about like that. And you'll notice that right now, if we look at the left on my toolbar, that I have a white rectangle. It's filled in with white, and the outline color, there's no outline. That's what that red line means. I want this to be black, or you could choose a different color if you want to. It doesn't really matter. So I'm going to go over here on the right side and find my color palette, which if you look at it, it looks sort of like a little artist's paint board. I'm going to pop that open. If you don't have that, you can't find it anywhere, then you can always find any of these palettes over on the right side in this window menu up at the top. So I'm going to open that up, go down to color, and there it is. Okay, in my color little picker thing here, I sometimes like to see like all of the options. So if you click on these 4 lines on the top right corner of it, once you have it open, and you say show options, it's going to give you all of, you can see like what the color combination is, and you'll also have the fill and the outline that you can select up here too. Okay, so I'm going to make sure that my fill-in color is in the front, and then I'm going to choose what color we want to do. I'll just do black, but you guys can, you can pick whatever color you want, really. It doesn't matter. Okay, and there we have my nice little rectangle that's black. Okay, now I'm going to, instead of drawing 2 more of these, because they won't be exactly the same, I'm going to copy them. So to do that, I'm going to select my black mouse, the selection tool, and you can see the shortcut key for that one is V, which means that if you hit V on your keyboard, it will give you that tool. Okay, and I'm going to, on my keyboard, hold down the Alt key, and that gives me the little like ghost mouse behind my mouse. You can see it appears there like a shadow. So I'm going to hold down the Alt key, I'm going to grab my shape, and then I'm going to drag it sideways. After you've started dragging it, if you hold down Shift, then it will make sure it drags in a straight line. But we just need it to kind of move over about that far. We want to leave a little gap. Maybe that's too far. I'll move it back. Okay, then I'm going to do the same thing. Hold down Alt, drag it over, and get my second one, just like that. Okay. Now the next thing that we need to do is you'll notice that these 3 bars are not all the same height. So we're going to shrink them down so they kind of have this staircase effect. So this first one we'll leave how it is, the one on the right. The middle one, we're going to just select it with that selection tool, and right here in the middle there's a little handle. I'm just going to grab that and push it down a little bit. Doesn't need to be very much. And do the same thing with the third one. I'm going to just select it by clicking on it, and then I'm going to just drag that handle down just a little bit so that it's shorter. Then we need to rotate them. So again, still just using my black mouse selection tool, I'm going to select all 3 of these shapes. And now you can see that around the corners, when I have my mouse kind of hover close to it, it's going to give us a little curvy bent arrow. And when you see that, it means that it's going to rotate. If it's like this, it means it will make it bigger or smaller. This means we can spin it. So I'm going to just put my mouse there, and I'm just going to click it, and we're going to just rotate it a little bit to the side. And this you just sort of want to eyeball to what you think looks good. So I'll put it right about there. And then when I click off, it just makes it so that it's no longer selected. Okay, we're doing pretty good so far. Next thing we need to do is we're going to cut off the bottom of these shapes so that it's flat, and we'll do that using Align and the Pathfinder palette. So first, to draw our line, we are going to use what is called the pen tool. pen tool looks like this. And you'll notice there are two that look very similar. We want just the regular pen tool, not the curvature tool. That's totally something different. So let's select this one. And the way that this tool works is you just click where you want lines to start and stop. You don't click and drag anything, you just click and let go, click and let go. If we're just doing straight lines, that's all we have to do. So I'm going to click where I want my starting line to be. Just click once and it drops a point, and you can see that now my mouse is kind of like tethered to that point, and it's asking like, where are you going to put the next point? And then I'm going to come over here, and if I hold down Shift on my keyboard, you'll notice that it makes my line go straight. So I'll hold Shift down, and then I'm going to click right here, and it will add a second point. So now I've got a line, and then it asks me like, do I want to keep drawing points, and I want to end the drawing. I don't need to draw any other points, so I'm just going to go back to my black selection mouse, and that finishes drawing the line. Now, there is one important thing that we need to notice right here. If we look over here at my color picker, right now that line that I just drew, it has a fill-in color, but it doesn't have an outline color. And if I click off of it, it may not be, you can see, oh, it looks like it's totally invisible, like there's nothing there, right? So I'm going to carefully kind of like try and select it again. So when you have just a plain line, it's not a shape, it's just a line that's straight. In order to see it, you're going to have a stroke instead of a fill. So all I have to do is I can come down here, or I can do this in my color palette, and I'm going to actually remove the fill-in color. Click on the stroke box so it's in the front, and then I'm going to add the outline color in right there. And that makes it, and you have to make sure your line is selected when you do that. That makes it so now we can see the line. Okay, so we have a line drawn across the bottom of our shapes. We have our three shapes, they look good. We're going to, still using the black mouse, we're going to just select all of these things so they're all selected, and we're going to come down here and find our Pathfinder palette. The Pathfinder palette looks like this. It's like two little boxes overlapping, and when you hover over it, it will tell you the name. I'm going to pop that open. If you don't have the Pathfinder palette, again, it can be found in the window menu. So you open that up and go down to where it says Pathfinder. It will pop it open for you, okay? All right, so in our Pathfinder palette, I have these all selected. I'm going to divide them. The divide button is this one, bottom left. When you hover over it, it will say divide. So I'm going to just click on that, and that divided it, and then we have to always ungroup. Anytime you use the Pathfinder, you must ungroup. So we're going to right click on my shape, and I'm going to go down to select ungroup. And then also very important on this step is after you ungroup, you have to click off of it so nothing is selected, and that allows you to come in here and you can see now that my pieces are all separate. So we don't need these bottom ones. I'm just going to hit the delete key on my keyboard, and that erases them. Okay, so this is looking pretty good. The last thing that we need to do is just add the words. So I'm going to get my type tool over here, and selecting that, I'm going to back up. Okay, I'm just going to click once where I want to start typing, and it puts in this little like lorem ipsum text. So I'm just going to type in what I want. So I'll type Adidas, and then we're going to choose what font we want. So to change the font and the size and everything, you're going to just select this, and over on your right side you have a character palette. It looks like this. It's a little A with a line next to it. When you pop it open, this lets you choose, lets you choose the font, if it's like bold or italic or something, and then you can choose the size and then some of the letter spacing issues. So again, if you don't have your character palette, you find that in the window menu up here. So window, and this one is actually under type, window, type, and then character. So if you need to find it, that's where it is. Okay, so I have it highlighted, and you're just going to open up the font list and choose yourself a font that looks pretty close to what you think the Adidas one is. You guys don't have the exact same font. Century Gothic looks pretty similar. I don't know what else is close. If you have Century Gothic, go for that. Futura, if you have that, but I don't think most of you do. So just pick one. It doesn't really, as long as it looks like you tried to choose a font, then you're probably good. Okay, so I chose Century Gothic. It gives me those nice round letters. And then underneath here where it says regular, I'm going to actually make it bold so that it looks a little bit closer to what they had. And then I can click this little arrow right here to choose my font size, and I'm just going to make this much bigger. Because if you remember, the Adidas logo looks like it goes a little bit outside on both the front and the back, so I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. And then I'll get my black mouse tool, which will let me kind of move this where it needs to be. And if I want to, I can even come to my character palette again, and with my text selected, even just the text box, there is a little option looks like this. When you move this in, what it does, so I'm moving it into the negatives, it's going to move my letters closer together, which looks a little bit more like the Adidas logo when we put them close. So I'll put it about like that. Maybe I'll make them a little bit bigger. Just kind of adjust it how you think it would be closest, and then make sure it looks good and say, great job, self. You're going to then select all of them with your black mouse, just select all the pieces, and let's group it together. You can either right click on it and choose group right here, or you can do Control G on your keyboard. Either one will work the same. So I'm going to right click and choose group, and that just makes it so that if you grab any one piece of it, it like sticks it together. So there we have the Adidas logo, and I'm just going to move this off to the side and do the Nike. Okay, so the next logo we're going to do is going to be our Nike logo, and you can see I dragged this here just kind of to give us a reference image. So this one we only need one tool, the pen tool, which as I mentioned in class the other day is super helpful, but it does take a little bit of time to get used to. So I'm going to go ahead and select my pen tool, and remember, you want just the regular pen tool, not the curvature tool. These are different. They look very similar, but we want this one, okay? Pen tool. The shortcut key is P. All right, so with the pen tool, the basic principle you need to understand is that if you want to draw straight lines, you just click and let go of your mouse. So if I were just doing straight lines, I would click, click, click. I just am clicking and letting go, and it will draw me straight lines. You'll notice it's trying to add a fill into it because over here on the side I have a fill-in color selected. If I were to remove that fill-in color and just add an outline color, you can see just my lines that I'm drawing are just straight lines. When you're doing shapes, you should always close them. That tells it you're finished, and you can see my mouse isn't really connected anymore. Okay, so that would be if I wanted to do straight lines. It's really easy. You just click, click, click. It's just connecting the dots basically, okay? If you want to do curved lines, it's a little bit trickier, but it is super helpful when we're doing some other projects. So the first thing you do with a curved line is you're going to click once. So I'm going to start, and I'm going to try and do this curved line right here, okay? I'm going to go from this point down probably to about right here. So I'm going to click my first point, just click and let go of my mouse. I'm not going to pull my mouse anywhere. I'm not going to hold the button down, just click and let go. And then you can see I'm tethered to that little spot. So now I'm going to kind of come down to about where I think the end of that first little curve that goes right about here is going to be. So maybe right here, and I'm going to click and hold my mouse down. Okay, I'm not letting it go yet. And then when I move it with it still held down, it gives me these little handles off on the side. So these little handles are going to allow me to control what this curved line looks. You can see I can rotate it, which tells us like which way the curve points, and I can pull it out further or push it in, and that's going to control like how pointy the curve is, okay? So I'm going to just kind of like get it to be as close to what I see in my Nike logo. So maybe like right about there is pretty close. We'll go with like right that, okay? Now, you'll notice that as I start to move my mouse, if I were to just click and let go, it would still give me a curved line because there's two handles here. This handle right here is controlling the line behind it. This handle is controlling the line I'm about to draw, and I don't really want that. So I'm going to just click on this last point I just did very carefully, and you'll notice it just cut off that second handle. So now my line again will go straight. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to just kind of come out here, if you look at the Nike symbol, and I'm going to just sort of try and line it up sort of horizontally with this one. So maybe like, I don't know, about right there maybe. Okay, and I'm doing a straight line, so I'm just going to click and let go. Then I need to do another straight line, so we're going to do this one on the bottom here. So I'm going to go down to about right here-ish, and I'm going to click and let go again because it's just straight. And then I'm going to do this last curve in 2 parts. So I'm going to maybe come about midway through, so maybe like right here, and I'm going to click and pull it, and that lets me get like a curved line. Okay. And then I'm going to come back up to the top, and you can see it's already making it curved because I have that second handle, but in this case it's working out pretty well for me. So I'm going to just let it be. I'm going to click and close it, and now my shape is all the way closed and my pen is no longer attached. If you get to this point and you're like, that doesn't really look that good, the great news is you can go up here and grab the white mouse, the direct select tool, and that will let you can grab each of these individual points. So if I just click once on that point, now I have the ability to kind of move it and adjust it. With the white mouse, you can also grab these little handles and you can kind of adjust them too, however you think they need to be adjusted. So if you want to move this stuff around a little bit, you can kind of like alter it just a bit to sort of change your logo to see what you want, okay? So just kind of adjust it using the white mouse. But remember, the pen tool, you click and let go to make straight lines, you click and hold your mouse down and then move it to make curved lines. And once you do it a little bit, you'll get sort of the hang of it. So try that 2 or 3 times until you get a good looking one. Give it a fill-in color. I'm going to make this one pink. And I'll remove the outline because I don't want to outline. And then let's move it off to the side and we'll move on to okay, our third logo, the YMCA, is what we're going to do next. So I'm going to start by grabbing the polygon shape tool. To do that, under my rectangle tool, I'm just going to hold down on it and it opens up to show me some more options. And I'm going to choose this one that says polygon. It looks like a hexagon. Okay. Alright, so we'll start off by drawing ourselves just a polygon, and if you hold down shift, it's going to make it so that the top and the bottom of them are flat, which is what we want. We don't want it turned like this, we want the top and bottom flat. So hold shift, draw yourself a polygon, and I'm going to move mine with my black mouse just kind of down here so it's not in the way. Alright, and I'm going to actually change this one's color to be green instead of pink. You can choose whatever color you want. Okay, we have our polygon, our hexagon drawn here. So now what we're going to do is we're going to make a copy of it by holding down the Option key on our keyboard and dragging this sideways so that it kind of overlaps it about like this. If you hold down Shift after you start dragging it, it will make sure it drags it in a straight line so that it lines up perfectly. And what you're looking at is kind of like how much overlap is right here. So you can see like what we're going for. We want it about this fat. So you should look and see about how much is poking out. It should be about that fat, okay? All right, after I've created my second polygon here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select both of these using the black mouse, just click and drag a selection, and we're going to open up the Pathfinder again. So I'm going to go down to my Pathfinder, pop that open, and I'm going to hit that divide button again, which cut them apart, but they're still grouped. So now the next thing is I'm going to ungroup these by right-clicking on the shapes and selecting Ungroup. And then after that, I'm going to click off in the empty area just off to the side, just click so that nothing is selected. And now I should be able to kind of move these apart, as you can see. So we only need to keep this one that's on the side there, so I'm going to delete these other two because we don't need them. All right, so we've got the first part of our Y, which is looking pretty good. Now the next part that we need to add is a triangle. So we're going to do that using our polygon tool again. So I'm going to come over here, grab that polygon tool. And this time, instead of just dragging, which would draw me a hexagon, what we need to do is we're just going to click one time, and it brings up this little menu that says, how many sides do you want your shape to have? So I'm going to just lower the sides here because a triangle has 3 sides. I'll put in 3. I'm going to click OK, and it gives me a triangle. Using my black mouse tool, the selection tool, I'm going to rotate this around and then shrink it down so that it kind of fits. So I'll hover near the outside corners of this shape, and I'm going to rotate it. And while I'm doing that, if I hold down Shift, it's going to make sure that it snaps to 45 and 180 degrees. So I'll flip it upside down like that. And then I'm going to also shrink it. So to do that, I'm just going to grab this outside corner and just drag it down smaller. And again, I'm going to hold down shift because that's going to make it so it doesn't get like way stretched out, like too tall or skinny. So I'm just going to kind of do that until it looks like my shape is the right size. So just kind of watch that it lines up pretty close on this side. It should be kind of like a straight line on the bottom and then kind of a straight line also across the top here. Okay, so just get that lined up pretty close. All right, we're looking pretty good. So now the next thing that we need to do is we need to make our edges curved because you can see on the YMCA they're not pointed, they are curvy. So what I'm going to do with that is I'm going to select, let's do this shape first. We'll select this little pointed arrow shape and I'm going to get my direct select mouse, which is the white one. And I'm going to come in here and you'll notice when I get that tool, these little white dots around the corners appear. So all you have to do around the corners is you grab that little white dot and you drag it in and it's going to kind of curve those edges. Obviously you don't want to drag it in too far, but just drag it in a little bit to kind of curve that and it should make your edges curved. Then we'll do the same thing to this triangle. I'll just grab those curved edges. And again, this will only work if you have the white mouse tool. If you have the black mouse tool, you won't see those little white dots anywhere appear. So the white mouse gives you that option. Okay, this is looking pretty good. So now the last thing we need to do is we need to add in the text. So I'm going to get my text tool again, and I will click once, and I will type the. And you can see it still has the same settings I used on the Adidas one. So I'm just going to select this by double clicking on it and open up my text panel, character panel, which again, if you can't find, is under Window, Type, Character. And I'm going to just make this a little bit smaller. I'm going to put the spacing back to 0 so it's not squished together letters. And then I'm going to just kind of go through and find a font that I think looks pretty close to the YMCA font. So again, same as with the Adidas, this doesn't really matter too much which one you choose, as long as it looks like you looked through your fonts and you tried to find one that was kind of similar. So maybe I will go with, I don't know. We'll just go with any font. I'll just choose Lucida Grand. It's not really that close, but it's a little bit similar. Okay, so maybe that needs to be a little bit smaller still. Okay, and then we'll do the same thing. I'm going to get my type tool. I'm going to click once right here, and I'll type YMCA in all capitals. Gonna make this smaller. And then I'm gonna use my black mouse tool to rotate it. So get that black mouse, hover near the corner, and we'll just turn it so that it kind of lines up. And make sure it's kind of at the same angle as the Y. Okay. Now with the text, you can also change the color of your text. So I want my text to match the Y shape, obviously, so I want it to be green. One thing that we can do is we'll select our text, and if we want to select them both at the same time, again, I'm using the black mouse, I'm going to just hold down Shift, and that lets me choose two things at once. Then there is a really cool tool called the eyedropper. This one looks like those little eyedroppers you use in science class. So I'm going to grab this tool. You can see the shortcut key for it is I. So if you can't see it, you just hit I on your keyboard and it will give you that tool. So I made sure these two are selected. Now I'm going to get my eyedropper tool and then I'm going to click on the thing I want it to be the same color as, which in this case is my green Y, and it changes them to be the exact same color, which is kind of nice. Okay, so now I'm going to go back to my black mouse. I will select all of these things and I will right click on it, say group, and that makes it so that they're all grouped together now, and I'll move them off to the side so I can do my last logo, which is Chanel. Okay, so we are now on to our final logo, which is the Chanel. To do this one, I'm going to start off by getting my circle tool, which underneath your shapes, if you hold down on it, it will give you the different options. I'm just going to choose the ellipse, which is the circle. And I'm going to draw myself a perfectly round circle by holding down Shift while I do it. Okay, and I'll just move this right about here so we can see it. Okay, so I have drawn myself a perfect round circle, and you'll notice that it's filled in with the same settings as my last thing I drew, which was the YMCA. And if you look over here at my color bar, you'll notice that right now the fill is green and there is no outline. For this, we're actually going to want to do the opposite. We want it to have an outline but have no fill. So to do that easily, we're going to click this little curved arrow and it will swap them. Oh, and you'll notice it didn't do it for me. That's because my circle is not selected. So you have to select the circle first, then swap them. And that will make it so that now your outline is green and there's no fill in color, it's just empty. Okay, once we have that done, we are going to go over to our stroke panel, which we haven't done yet. So make sure your circle is still selected, and we're going to go to our stroke, which looks like this. It's 3 little lines. And if you can't find it, again, you go up to that window menu at the top and go down and find stroke. Now, when you open it, yours may look like this. If it just looks like this, that's fine, but if you want to see more options, you can always click on this and say show options. It just gives you more choices of things you can change. Okay, so what we're going to do is we are going to up the weight of our circle until it looks about as thick as we want it to be. So if I come out here, you can see while I increase this, it's just going to make that line be fatter. So we're going to want to kind of make it pretty fat. It depends on how big your circle is, how fat you make it, but just kind of eyeball what it should look like and make it about that same amount of fatness. Okay, so I'm going to make it pretty fat. Okay, now once we have this shape, you'll notice that the fat stroke, like the color goes around it, but there's just that stroke that goes right through the middle. You can see like my blue line here. We're going to need to make sure that you can see that, so just spot it on yours. And then we're going to do a tricky little thing using the pen tool add button. And this is something that we haven't done yet before yet either. So it's pretty cool. What I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my pen tool. And when I hold down on it, you'll notice that it gives me some more options. So we can choose just the regular pen tool, or we can have the add anchor point tool, delete anchor point tool, or anchor point tool just by itself. So we're going to select the add anchor point tool right here. And you'll notice it now has a little plus sign next to it, so make sure you have that. And basically what we're going to want to do is we want to add a point on this blue line where the C should kind of stop. So about right there, so maybe like about right here. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use this, and I have to click on the blue line. If I click in just the green area, it's not going to work. It's got to be on the blue. I'm just going to click, and you'll notice that what that did was it added an extra little point right there on my line, and it now has some handles because it has curved lines around it, and you'll be able to see there's a point there already on the edge. And so I'm going to come in here and do the same thing kind of on the bottom half. So I'll kind of look at where the C should end, and I'll put a point right about there too. So I just added in this point and this point. The circle already had this one, there's one over here, and then there's one at the bottom too. Okay, now once you've added in those 2 points, what we're going to do next is you're going to get your white mouse tool, and we're going to select that one that's just on the far side that was already there. You're going to click on it, and you'll notice that it's selected because it has turned blue and all the other ones are white. So you just click on it until it's blue, and then I'm going to hit the delete key on my keyboard. That will erase that point, and it basically just cut open my circle so that now I have this like C looking shape, and it's perfectly round. It looks almost exactly like this one. So we're making pretty good progress. Now instead of doing that whole process all over again, we're just going to copy this and we'll flip it around. So I'm going to use my black mouse now, and I'm going to hold down Alt on my keyboard and drag it over, which gives me a copy. And then instead of rotating it, because I don't want to just spin it around, I want to like reflect it like a mirror. In order to do that, I'm going to go up to, with it selected, I'm going to go to the Object menu at the top, and I'm going to go down to Transform. And then I'm going to go to Reflect, And it pops open this little menu option here for me, and it says, which way do you want to reflect it? And it gives you a little diagram showing you how it would flip it. So I'm going to want to flip it kind of across this vertical axis, so I'll choose vertical, and then I'll click OK, and it will flip it backwards for me so that now I've got two C's that are identical, and they're reflected perfectly off each other. Okay, so I'm going to just move these right here so I can add some text. Okay, last thing we need to do is add the text. So I'm going to get my text tool, click once, and I'm going to type in all caps Chanel. And this font that I have is pretty close again. So I think the font that I'm using, so I'll just select this, open up my character panel, the little letter. And the font that I'm using is called Lucida Grand, and it's bold. So you can choose whatever font you think looks close, so if you want to choose a different one. And then I'm just going to make this bigger until it fits. So it should be even a little bit bigger than the thing. Okay, and if you want to make yours be all the same color, you can use that eyedropper tool we used before, but it might be a little bit tricky because when you eyedropper text onto a stroke, let me show you what happens. So I have my text selected, I'm going to get my eyedropper tool, and I'm going to select on my green thing, and it's like, what the? Just did something crazy. That's because what it did was it put a green stroke on it, so now you can see my letters have a green outline, and it also made that stroke really fat. So all you have to do to fix that is down here in your color thing, you're just going to flip it, so swap it so that it has a fill-in color instead of an outline color. And that will give you sort of the look that you want. So I'm going to choose a different color than green for mine because I want to do something different. I'll do purple maybe. Oh, that's not what I want. I want the outline, make sure that's in front, choose purple, then I'll choose the Chanel, I'll use my eyedropper, click on the letters. It gives me super weird font thickness, so I'm just going to click that little arrow on the color thing to swap the fill in the stroke, and that's going to make it so that it's just filled in purple instead of outlined in purple. Last thing is I'm going to use my black mouse and I'm going to select all of these and I'm going to group them. So right click, choose group, so they're all stuck together. And I made mine super huge, so I'm going to just shrink it down a little bit, holding down shift because I don't want to like squish it. So I'm going to hold shift so it doesn't get squashed. And there we have our Chanel logo.